I never thought a single dinner table argument would push me to the edge, but that night everything changed. I was hungry, tired, and simply asked my son for a little extra food. Instead of understanding, he snapped. His eyes burned with irritation. Then splash! Ice cold water hit my face. The shock, the humiliation, the betrayal. It all happened in seconds. He forgot one thing, though. Every cent in his bank account came from me. And in that moment, something inside me broke. What I did next would shake his world. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more revenge stories. My name is Mr. Thompson, and for most of my life, I believe that family was the safest place a person could have. When my wife passed away, that belief felt even stronger. My world became empty overnight, and the quiet in my house felt like a heavy blanket on my chest. So when my son Kelvin asked me to come live with him, I accepted without a second thought. I thought it was love. I thought it was care. I thought it was home. Kelvin welcomed me warmly at first. He hugged me at the door and carried my small bag inside like he used to do when he was a boy. His wife Brenda smiled politely and told me I could stay in the room near the kitchen. The room was small, but I was grateful. At that moment, everything felt peaceful. I truly believed I was entering a new chapter where I would not be alone anymore. For a while, things were fine. Kelvin would ask how I was feeling, and Brenda would help me warm my tea. We ate dinner together, and they made it seem like I was part of their daily life. I didn't expect anything more. But slowly, very slowly, things began to change. It started with small comments. Brenda would sigh whenever I walked into the living room, as if my steps were too loud. Kelvin began complaining about the electricity bill, even though I hardly used anything except a lamp at night. Sometimes he would tell me to eat faster because he was tired of waiting. The warm home I thought I had entered began to feel colder each day. I tried to help around the house to show I wasn't a burden. I washed dishes, swept the floor, and even fixed small things that were broken. But instead of thanks, I heard more remarks. Dad, you're in the way. Why didn't you do it earlier? You should know better. The more I tried, the more unwelcome I felt. I started eating in the kitchen instead of the dining room after Brenda said I made the table too crowded. I didn't want to cause trouble, so I simply nodded and obeyed. I forced myself to smile even when my heart hurt. Our neighbor, Mrs. Hargrove, noticed something was wrong before anyone else. She was a kind woman with soft eyes who had known Kelvin since he was a little boy. Whenever she saw me outside, she would stop and chat. One afternoon, she touched my arm and said, "You look tired, dear. Are you all right?" I told her I was fine, but the truth showed on my face. She gave me a sad look, the kind that says she knows the truth but won't push further. The days passed, and the house no longer felt like my home. I felt more like a visitor who had stayed too long. Kelvin and Brenda would whisper in the hallway, stop talking whenever I walked by, and exchange glances that made my stomach twist. I tried to ignore it, but you can always feel when you are no longer wanted. I didn't know it then, but the small cracks in our home were only the beginning. The warmth I hoped for was fading fast, and the son I raised with love was not the same young man I once knew. The change in the house did not happen all at once. It grew slowly, like a shadow stretching across a wall. But in time, it became impossible to ignore. One morning I walked into the kitchen hoping to have breakfast with Kelvin and Brenda like we used to. They were already eating, whispering, and laughing. When I greeted them, the room went silent. Brenda looked at Kelvin, then back at her plate, and continued eating without a single word. I sat down quietly and reached for a small spoon of beans. Brenda's voice cut through the air, sharp and cold. "Please don't take too much. We need this food to last." I froze for a moment. The spoon in my hand felt heavy. It wasn't what she said. It was the way she said it, as if I was someone begging on the street, as if I didn't belong there. I slowly returned the spoon to the bowl. "I'll just take a little," I said softly. Kelvin didn't look at me. He simply chewed his food as if he didn't hear anything. I forced myself to eat, even though every bite tasted bitter. Later that week, the same thing happened again, but worse. Brenda served dinner, placing a very small portion on my plate. I didn't complain, I only smiled and thanked her. But as I watched Kelvin eat a full plate of food, I wondered silently what I had done wrong. That evening, after I finished my tiny meal, I stood to wash my plate. Brenda suddenly grabbed the pot and said, "There's nothing left for extra. Please don't ask." I hadn't said a word about wanting more, but the message was clear. My hunger didn't matter. I walked to my room and sat on the edge of my bed. I felt like a child again, small, quiet, and invisible. I thought about my wife and how she used to remind me that no matter how hard life gets, home will always be safe. But the place I lived in now didn't feel safe at all. Things grew worse when Kelvin began locking the fridge. The first time I tried to open it and found a big silver lock hanging on the handle, my heart sank. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the lock as if it were a sign telling me I wasn't part of the family anymore. Kelvin walked into the kitchen and saw me standing there. "It's nothing personal, Dad," he said. "We just need to control things better. Food isn't free." I nodded, even though the words cut deep. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply walked back to my room, trying not to let the sadness show on my face. That night, while sitting on the porch to clear my head, Mrs. Hargrove stepped over. She carried a small, warm bowl covered with foil. "I made too much today," she said gently. "Please have this." I knew she didn't make too much. She could see I was eating less and less, and her kindness felt like a soft hand on a wounded heart. Kelvin didn't know she had heard him earlier in the week when he spoke on the phone, saying I needed to go because I ate too much. She didn't tell me what she heard right away, but her worry showed every time she looked at me. In those days, I began to realize something I never wanted to admit. I was living in a house where my presence felt like a problem. 2 days passed where I barely ate anything. Not because food was not in the house, but because I was scared of causing more trouble. Every time I asked for something, Brenda rolled her eyes, and Kelvin acted as if I was demanding gold. So I stayed quiet. I drank water, ate a little bread when I could, and tried to keep myself busy so I wouldn't feel the hunger too much. On the third evening, Brenda cooked rice and stew. The smell filled the whole house, warm and inviting. I stood by the doorway, waiting for them to finish serving before I went to take my portion. When I finally sat at the table, I saw only a very small amount on my plate, almost like food made for a child. I didn't complain. I ate slowly, trying to make it last. When I finished, my stomach was still empty and my hands were shaking a little from weakness. For a moment, I thought about keeping quiet as always. But hunger can make even a quiet man speak. I cleared my throat gently and said, "Kelvin, may I please have a little more food? Just a small amount. I haven't eaten well in days." I expected at least a calm answer. Instead, Kelvin snapped his head toward me as if I said something offensive. "More? Why do you always want more?" he shouted. I blinked, confused. "I'm only hungry," I said. "Just a little." Before I could finish, Brenda stood with her arms crossed. "You always have something to ask," she said. "You can't control yourself for once?" I felt my face heat with shame. "I am not trying to disturb." Kelvin suddenly banged his cup on the table. The sound made me jump. "Dad, stop pretending you don't know what you're doing. Food is expensive." I looked down at my hands. My voice was soft. "I'm only asking because I've eaten so little." Kelvin's expression changed from anger to something cold and sharp. He stood up, picked up his glass of cold water, and walked toward me. I thought he wanted to refill my cup or hand it to me, but without warning, he raised the cup and splashed the water right onto my face. The water was icy cold. It ran down my cheeks, soaked my shirt, and dripped onto the floor. My whole body froze. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just sat there, stunned. Brenda burst into laughter as if she had just watched a comedy show. Kelvin shook his head and said, "Maybe this will help you learn your place." My heart felt as if it cracked. Not from the water, but from the realization that the boy I raised, fed, clothed, and protected could humiliate me like that. I wiped my face quietly. "I'm sorry," I whispered, though I wasn't sure what I was apologizing for anymore. Later that night, I stepped outside to sit on the porch. My clothes had dried, but the cold feeling stayed on my skin. Mrs. Hargrove came outside to throw trash away, but when she saw me sitting there with red eyes and a tired face, she walked over slowly. "What happened to you?" she asked softly. I shook my head. "It's nothing." She studied me for a moment, then placed her hand on my shoulder. "You deserve better than whatever's happening in that house." Her words were gentle, but they woke something inside me, a feeling I had ignored for too long, self-respect. Later, when I returned to my room, I sat at the edge of my bed and stared at the old drawer where I kept my important papers. I remembered something Kelvin had forgotten, the savings account I created when he was still a boy. An account he thought only he controlled. An account I still had full rights to. For the first time in a long while, my mind felt sharp, and my heart felt tired enough to consider a different kind of future. That night, after I wiped the last drop of cold water from my face, I sat quietly on my bed and stared at the drawer beside me. It had been years since I opened it. Inside were documents I kept safe from the time Kelvin was still in school. Papers I never thought I would ever need again. My hands shook a little as I slid the drawer open. At the top were old receipts, pictures of my wife, and a few letters. Under those, wrapped in a brown envelope, were the bank papers. The same bank account where I'd saved money for Kelvin since he was a boy. Money I earned through hard work, sweat, and long days at the workshop. Kelvin had always believed the account was his. I never corrected him because I wanted him to feel supported. I wanted to help him build a better life. But he never knew I was still listed as the main owner. It was my name that still held full control. I sat quietly for a moment, the papers open on my lap. I wasn't angry, I was disappointed. My heart felt heavy, like someone had placed a stone inside my chest. How did things get this far? How did the boy I raised with love grow into a man who could pour water on my face and laugh at my hunger? I brushed my fingers across the papers and exhaled slowly. Maybe I had stayed too long. Maybe I had trusted too much. The next morning, after Kelvin and Brenda left for work, I made myself a cup of warm tea. The house felt peaceful without their voices. I sat at the table and pulled out the bank papers again. My eyes lingered on the numbers. There was far more money there than Kelvin ever imagined. I had always kept adding small amounts, even when I didn't have much. I wanted him to have a good future. I wanted him to live a life better than mine. But he never saw the value of what I gave him. And now, he didn't even see the value of me. I walked to my room, picked up my old phone, and called the bank. The woman on the line spoke politely as I verified my identity. In less than an hour, everything changed, quietly, smoothly, without a single word spoken to Kelvin. Every cent in that account was transferred to a new private account in my name only. When it was done, I sat back and closed my eyes. The house was silent, but inside me, something felt clearer than ever. I spent the next hour packing my small bag. I didn't take much, just my passport, a few clothes, my medicines, and the envelope of important documents. I left my old tools behind on the shelf, the same ones I used to fix Kelvin's toys. I touched them gently before leaving the room. Some memories were too heavy to carry. That afternoon, I bought a plane ticket on my phone. I didn't choose the destination because it was fancy. I chose it because it was far and quiet. A place where no one would raise their voice at me. A place where I could breathe without fear. Before sunset, Mrs. Hargrove stopped by. She saw my packed bag and her face softened with understanding before I even spoke. "You're leaving," she said quietly. I nodded. "It's time." She took my hand and held it gently. "You deserve peace. Don't ever forget that." Her kindness almost brought tears to my eyes. For a moment, I felt like someone finally saw me, not as a burden, not as an inconvenience, but as a human being who had tried his best. When she left, I stood alone in the hallway. The house was still. Kelvin and Brenda wouldn't return for hours. Everything was ready, and for the first time in a long time, so was I. I woke up before the sun rose. The sky was still dark, quiet, and empty. It was the perfect time to leave. I moved slowly so the floorboards wouldn't make noise. Every sound felt louder in that silence, but I kept going. My small bag was already packed, resting near the door like it had been waiting for this moment. I walked through the house one last time. The living room where I once laughed with Kelvin felt like a stranger's place now. The kitchen where I used to cook for him when he was little looked cold and lifeless. Even my room, where I had spent so many nights thinking and praying for peace, felt like a box full of memories I didn't want to carry anymore. I didn't write a note. There was nothing left to explain. I opened the front door gently, stepped outside, and closed it behind me without a sound. A taxi I booked earlier rolled up the street and stopped in front of the house. The driver helped me with my bag. "Airport, sir?" he asked. "Yes," I said softly. As we pulled away, I looked at the house for the last time. No lights were on, no curtains moved, no voices spoke. It was a quiet goodbye. During the ride, my heart felt heavy but steady. I didn't feel fear, I didn't feel guilt. I felt something different, something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. When we reached the airport, the bright lights and crowd felt like another world. People rushed around with bags, laughing, talking, living. No one knew me. No one judged me. No one shouted at me. I blended into the crowd like a leaf in the wind, and for once, that felt good. I checked in for my flight and sat near a large window. Outside, planes were taking off one after another, carrying people to new places. I watched them with calm eyes. My hands were steady now. My chest didn't hurt anymore. I was leaving the pain behind, step by step. While I waited, I turned off my phone completely. Not silent, not airplane mode. Off. I didn't want calls. I didn't want messages. I didn't want explanations. I wanted peace. Far away back at the house, Kelvin was waking up. I wasn't there, but I could imagine it clearly. He would stretch, pick up his phone, and try to order breakfast like he always did. Then the message would appear. Transaction declined. He would try again. Declined. Again. Declined. Then he would check the account. Empty. Every dollar gone. The same money I saved for him all his life. The same money he thought he deserved more than respect. Brenda would panic first. Kelvin would shout. They would blame each other. They would search the house for me. They would call my name with fear in their voices, not love. But I wouldn't hear any of it. My boarding time arrived. I stood, picked up my small bag, and walked toward the gate. My steps were slow, steady, and sure. The world ahead of me felt wide and new, untouched by anger or noise. As I walked through the jet bridge, I whispered quietly to myself, "Let this be my fresh start." I didn't look back, not once. And for the first time in many years, I felt like I truly belonged somewhere. Not in a house, not with people who used me, but in the quiet place inside my own heart where peace finally lived again. And that's how I took back control of my life. Thanks for watching. Comment below where you're watching from, share your thoughts, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more shocking real-life stories. Stay tuned for more tales of unexpected twists and life lessons